Hey, what's going on, y'all? I'm gonna show you how to make really smooth R&B samples. Getting that R&B sound is really difficult because there's some complex harmonies you need to know, textures, all this layering and stuff, but I guarantee after watching this video, you'll have a much better sense of how to get that sound. First, every single one of these sounds is going to come from my Dedications 2 bank, which I did with Prod by Infinite. I use these in almost every single sample I'm making, even if it's not R&B, because that's how versatile this bank is. First, I want to find a good bell/pad sound, so of course I go to my sound bell, but it's a pad. All I'm playing is 7th chords, which I'll show you how to make those right now. All I'm doing is taking the bass note, which is F sharp in this case. I'm skipping a note in the scale, putting another note, skipping another note in the scale, putting another, skipping another note in the scale, and adding the last one. Almost every single R&B, trap, so whatever sample you're going to hear is going to have 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th, suspended chords, all these kind of things. They're very rarely going to have just major or just minor chords. I'm also doing the same thing for the F minor here, so I'm just going F, skipping the G in the scale, going to G sharp, skipping the A sharp, go to C, skip to C sharp, go to D sharp. And then at the end, I switch the chord up just to get some more variation, because if I'm just going from one chord to another chord throughout the entire sample, it kind of gets boring. Then one inversion that no one always does, everyone always likes to bring the third up, so right here would be this A sharp or this G sharp. What you can actually do is just bring the bass notes down an entire octave. What this will do will add a lot more fullness to the sample, because now that note's playing a whole octave lower, which will give a lot more bass to the sound. Then also gives just a really unique chord sound that you don't hear that often. For most of the sounds here, I'm not really putting on many effects because all the effects are really well done in the bank. So all I have is an EQ to cut out some of the really low lows and boost some of the highs. And then I have a reverb where I'm bringing down the decay to 3.4 and of course bringing the low cut knob up. And I want to make sure that the color is on 1970 to get that more vintage sound. Next, I'm getting an RP sound, which is called Cute Keys, and I'm playing it really high up, and all I'm doing is playing the notes that were in the chord that's playing below it. So here you can see I'm playing the F sharp, A sharp, and the F, which is all in that F sharp major 7 chord. Then for effects, I'm using one of my favorite delays in Valhalla delay. All you do is go to SFX, go to Otherworldly, and then it is BBD the darkness. Then I also have a really long reverb, again bringing up the low cut, but I'm not really adding any other effects other than that, just because I want to get a really wide, stereo, roomy feel from the sample. Next, I'm getting an electric piano sound called Distrust from the bank, and all I'm doing is playing the chords that are playing underneath, so again the F sharp major 7, the F minor 7, but I'm not doing it exactly whenever that other chord hits on the pad. As you can see, I'm playing it at syncopated parts off the grid, and really all that means is I'm not playing it on a downbeat. I did this because I think a lot of people, whenever they're making samples, is that they forget that there's going to be drums on top of it. So for example, I'll play this with the metronome, and all this piano chord is doing is just leading into where I think a snare could go. So you can hear it's like the bum, bum, da, ch. You know, that kind of sound. That's what I want to do by just adding these little accented sounds in the background. Then I'm adding one of the best basses, my man Infinity Beats. He made Manila, which is a really great synth bass. And again, all I'm doing is following the bass notes of the chords. And you can also see I'm leaving some a tad bit off the grid just to give it a little more bounce, but it's really nothing crazy. Next, you need to add some textures, so I'm adding some drum loops in the background. To get that underwater effect, I'm going to Fruity Love Filter. Then you want to change this knob. Usually it's on single. Put it to dual. Then you just bring the cutoff frequency down a good bit. And that'll cut out some of the lows as well as some of the highs. Then I'm putting on a flanger, which is how you kind of get that underwater effect. That or chorus. And then I'm adding a reverb, cutting out the low cut, adding a lot of verb on it. So I have 53% mix. And that's really it. Then this is the most important part of the sample. One really good thing you can do is always use your own vocals. As you saw in my boom bap sample video, I used my vocals in it, and this is just a really good way to get your own unique touch on your samples. So first I'll play it completely dry. As you can hear, I sound really weird because all I did was record with auto-tune, but I knew I was going to add some crazy effects on afterwards. So first I just have the auto tune, which is putting it in the key that I'm in. Then I'm using this guitar rig preset called fuzz versus reverse split. This has a bunch of delays, some distortion, some phasers, some wah, some reverb. All this will give it a really floaty sensation. Then I'm going to parametric EQ and I'm just cutting out all the highs, all the lows, because I don't want this to be the center point of the sample. I already have a really nice chord progression. I have some really nice touches and accents, so I don't need to add too much more. Then I have a really hard compressor. As you can see, the ratio is at 9.35. So that's making sure that all the sounds are exactly the same level. Then again, I have the same preset, SFX, Otherworldly, The Darkness. And this again will just give it a really long tail and it'll make it feel like you're in a huge, massive room. And then I have a really long reverb, again, 53% mix, to again, give it a really smooth, freezing kind of sensation. So here's the before and after of all the vocals. Then for the master chain, of course, I'm using my speaker, go to mid, turn the dry wet almost all the way down, and really all that's doing is adding a tad of saturation. But then this is the sauce. Murder Melodies is one of the craziest plugins. I use this on every single sample. And all I'm doing is I'm using the spread, which will just make it a little more stereo, adding the heat knob, which is really just saturation. And then most importantly, I'm doing this reverse effect. What the reverse does is randomly throughout the sample, it'll just reverse some of the sounds very slightly. And although it doesn't do anything crazy, it adds a little bit of uniqueness because it's a sound that's really hard to replicate. To get dedications too, just check the link below. It's definitely my favorite bank I've made. Every single one of those 70 sounds is usable, and I've used every single one of them in a bunch of different samples. But that's going to be it for me. I'll catch y'all on the next one, and please check out some of my other vids.